So episode 7,
The
big 7. And after this, we're not going to film another one. It's our last one.
That's biblical.
No, I'm kidding.
right. End on the perfect number.
Yeah. Right. No, I'm super excited for today. I'm excited for all of our podcasts, but love that we have Mr. JP in the house. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. We've been texting back and forth about doing this, I think, since like December of last year.
Since we started, I mean, we wanted to talk to you from when we started doing this podcast. Like
Right.
you were on the one of the top people on the list we wanted to talk to.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, absolutely. So, we'll just we'll go ahead and dive on in. Like this is gonna be more conversational kind of thing.
Yeah, let him talk this time.
Yeah, I have a bad habit of like getting excited, especially because we're talking about storms and like weather and stuff, and so I get pretty excited. But yeah. So JP, tell us a little bit about yourself. And kind of what you're doing these days, and just introduce everybody to you.
Okay. Well, like these fine gentlemen have said, my name is JP Garrison. I'm a student pastor in Newnan, Georgia, and I've got a wife. I've got 2 kids, a 4-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. So I've been in Newnan for the past 6.5 years now. And what, anything else you want to know about me?
What should we know?
We learned that he does not like olives.
I hate olives.
Let's state that for the record.
Those are the worst.
What is your worst food?
Olives.
Least favorite?
Olives. So that's like the worst, grossest thing in the world.
It's awful. Even if
hilarious.
So my wife loves olives, and she every time we order a pizza, she's like, "Can I get olives on them?" I'm like, "Yeah, but on your side."
Right.
And if a little olive gets on a piece of pizza, I take it off, and it has the olive taste.
Right. You just have to run it under the sink, the slice of pizza for a little while.
Rinse it off.
Do you do that?
Yeah. No, but
is that how you get rid of the pepperoni grease?
Right. Well, I was gonna say, the sponsor for this episode is Olive Garden, so really unfortunate.
Well.
What a shame.
Definitely not. No. But yeah, so we got to meet JP. Not under great circumstances.
No, not at all.
But it's definitely. I'm glad that we all got to meet you, though.
Yes.
So and we've maintained friendship and contact over the years. But we met JP in March of 2021.
Yep.
And just a little backstory on that day. I think it was, I should have looked this
Thursday.
up. Yeah, was it the 25th or something like that?
I think it was the 25th. Technically, it was like after midnight.
Yeah, it was after midnight on
So
26th.
26, yeah.
So I chased that day.
Yeah.
It was a high risk. And actually, the tornado that we're going to be talking about, that this episode's kind of centered around, is the Newnan EF-4 tornado, which ended up being the most powerful tornado of that outbreak, and was well outside of the high risk area, which was kind of crazy. And the parent supercell of that tornado originated, I believe, in maybe Louisiana, definitely southern Mississippi, and made the trek all the way across 3 states, and then finally put down a nasty tornado right as it came into Newnan. But I was chasing that day. It was me, Brent, and Nolan, and we were out in the Rambo. We had our
we still had the Rambo.
Yeah, had our ambulance out there, and it was no, it was not the Rambo. It was still the truck.
We already had the truck.
Yeah, we already had the truck. So sorry about that. Yeah, we were chasing the truck. We spent all day in Alabama and didn't really see anything. We stayed a little bit too far north, I think, that day. The warm front didn't quite reach to where we were in the better wind shear, but we were in the kind of limited instability. So we kind of struck out that day. Drove all the way home, and I can't go to sleep on severe weather days, so I was staying up and tracking the weather and everything like that, and then saw that supercell coming into to Georgia and to Newnan, and then eventually saw the debris ball and everything. And I'm very big on X, formerly Twitter, where that's where you get a lot of good disaster response information from other storm chasers, people in the community, just real-time stuff. And that's when I saw that the Coweta County EMA had been requesting assistance. Right after that tornado had gone through, hey, we need everybody with a chainsaw here, like mass destruction, everything like that. So I texted Daniel that night and said, we're going to Newnan
We were
tomorrow.
still awake.
Yeah.
Yep. Because we had been texting with you coming back from that trip, from chasing, and you were telling me, like, we got to watch out for this still. And we were kind of watching it and watching the radar together, like you'd watch a movie with your friends, Warren and I would watch radar together. Yeah. No, we were watching it, and I remember you texted me. I finally started to go to sleep, and then you hit me with one more text, and you were like, Newnan, we're going tomorrow. And then we woke up and
went
hit
that
the
morning.
road.
I know a little bit about your story. I mean, you've told us you surviving the Newnan tornado, but it was, really close to your house and everything. I mean, I remember when we first got to your house looking out behind your backyard and just, that's like kind of where the core of the tornado went. Tell us about kind of maybe that day leading up to, the tornado. Was it like a normal day?
Sure. Yeah.
And then, all the way through.
There's a picture of me. So I had just I'm an old man in my soul, and I had just my wife and I, when we bought the house, we loved it, loved the property, loved the woods. Yeah. And so we were like, man, this is perfect. It's about an 1.5 acre lot, which is kind of rare now. They try to build things as close as possible now. So we fell in love with that lot. And so, but there's some we had to push back the woods a little bit, ironically now. And so we were working on it, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of dirt here. Let me plant some grass. And so planted grass. Stephanie took some pictures of me, looking, trying to find little shoots and everything. Yeah. And when we had our son, he was about 7 months old in March of 2021. I was taking him, I was showing him what I had created. The grass is growing, and I wanted him to feel the grass under his feet. So Stephanie took this picture. And this was Thursday evening around 5 o'clock after coming home from work, and I'm there just playing with Sam, and there's woods in the background of the picture, and we're playing. So I really don't remember a whole lot about the afternoon or whatever leading up to it. At work, I remember I always brought home my guitar because I led worship for a little while. I always brought home my guitar on Thursdays because we're off on Fridays. And so just a normal Thursday. Like any day in Newnan, whenever there's severe weather, they're like, hey, just be weather aware. Yeah. We would always set our phones to alert us if anything happened. But honestly, I love weather. Weather. I've been a nerd. I remember middle school watching the Weather Channel when a hurricane was coming through to see how big the hurricane was going to get. And I hate that all these people lost their homes. So, whoa, cool.
It's fascinating.
Wow.
It's fascinating.
Right.
And Stephanie and I, we would watch the thunderstorms come in. We even, when there was another system earlier in the year, we watched Twisters right before the system because we were just excited about it. Same thing with this system. We knew there would be some potential overnight severe weather, and so we laid down in bed around 11 o'clock. And then I started getting texts from family members in Tennessee saying, "Hey, just be aware. There's this cell coming up." And I remember Roanoke because it kind of came up from Roanoke in Alabama. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, yeah, I see it, but obviously it's going to go either north or south of us.
Right.
And I'm like, what are the odds? And so I'm like, okay, yeah, thank you for letting us know, but we'll be fine.
Right.
And I kept getting more and more texts, and so I'm like, okay, let's pay attention. And as it started getting closer, we started getting I think the warning came about 20 minutes before.
It's pretty good.
And it was really good. And so we're like, okay, let's wake up. And so Sam was sleeping in his room, and we didn't really want to wake him just for a warning because we had experienced probably 10 warnings before. And then as the siren went off, we're like, all right, let's go wake him up. So we got Sam, and we live on a ranch style house with a bonus room. And so on a ranch style house, there's not a basement, obviously.
Right.
And so we're like, all right, the safest place we think is in the stairwell, not under the stairwell, just the stairwell. So we shut the door that, that goes in between the stairwell and the rest of the house. Shut the door. We grab some cushions from the couches.
Yeah.
And we're still like, all right, we'll do this for a little bit.
Right.
And then we'll
20,
we'll
however long the tornado warning is, we're going to wait till it's over.
And I remember watching on my phone, the weather report, and I remember watching, I forgot his name, the weather.
Was it Brad Nitz?
Maybe.
Glenn Burns.
But he's now retired.
Oh, Glenn Burns.
Yeah. But I remember he had a this 3D model of the thunderstorm.
Right.
And I remember him being like, "This is amazing! Like we've never seen something like this." And I'm like,
"It's on the ground."
Yeah, I'm like, "That's great," but like, so he did the whole like, hey, the arrows where he said it will be in Newnan in 4 minutes.
Right.
And then our internet cut out. Like,
Ooh,
and
wow.
so I on my phone, I set an alarm for 4 minutes. I'm like, okay, let me do that at least.
Yeah.
Wow, that's smart thinking, man.
So shut the door, and Sam is still like,
he doesn't know what's going on.
I'm just going to watch my parents as cues to know what I should be doing.
Right.
And so we're trying to and I just remember the lightning. The lightning, even before the warnings or whatever, is just the most lightning I've ever seen in my whole life. And I remember before thinking like, wow, this is really awesome.
Yeah, right.
This is so cool.
It's strobing.
Yeah, strobe lights. Yeah.
Right.
So as it's getting closer, we start hearing the rain, and then we hear the wind in the rain, where you hear the sheets.
Yeah. Yep.
I kind of start hitting the side.
Right.
We heard it more and more, and then I don't remember. There wasn't really a train, just hard rain. And then our door, and it's kind of a storm door because there's a storm strip in between.
Yeah.
And I just remember it rattling, and I remember the walls just kind of rattling and the rain hitting the house really hard. And then it just started shaking, and then that's when we started praying.
Yeah.
And then screaming. And then screaming, praying.
Right.
Where it's just like, Lord, save us. Save us. And there was about 5 seconds where I'm like, this could go either way. And it was terrifying. And then once again, I didn't hear a train, but I just remember hearing, and we had about an acre of woods, pine trees, strong oak trees. And I just remember hearing just cracks, just crack after crack after crack, just while the house is shaking. And then at some point in those 5 seconds, our window in the bonus room blew out, and our stairwell turns a little bit, which is good because the glass shattered. It came out, and we had our cushions over us. I was over Sam, and the glass kind of ricocheted, came around, and it was like landing on us, and we're screaming.
Wow.
And it sounded like, later on, I told Stephanie, it's like this monster was just walking in our woods and just tearing down all the trees. And later on, we found out there was a monster walking through our yard. And as soon as it started, it felt like an hour, but as soon as it started, it let up. Thankfully, it was a pretty fast moving system. So we kind of look at each other, and we're like, okay, I think we're safe. It let us go. I think we're good. We're shaking, still crying. Sam is now crying because he's like, Mom and Dad are crying, which means I should cry.
Right.
And then, we're hugging each other. We're like, okay. And then my alarm on my phone goes off.
Wow. That 4-minute alarm, man.
So it's like, it's 4 minutes was probably actually about 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Right.
And, just with a delay of like 4 minutes. Wi-Fi went out. I probably didn't think about it till another 30 seconds. So it was just funny. It was like, all right, wow, we're good. And then, my alarm goes off to be like, get ready.
Yeah, it's coming.
So at that point, I don't know what's on the other side of the door. And
like, do you still have a house?
Yeah, exactly. And Stephanie and I, now we know, but like I wasn't wearing shoes. And so,
oh, wow.
So I was on my knees. And so I opened the door and I'm like, okay, we still have walls. We still have a house. Our house was good.
Yeah.
And ironically, that was where we took shelter, was like the main part of the house that took the most damage.
Right.
So I walk out and then I grab my shoes and then we open our front door, and that's when we realize just how big this thing was. We like check on our neighbors and yeah, we walk up and there's trees everywhere.
Yeah.
The goalpost, our basketball goal that was once in our driveway, I didn't know it now, but it was like way in the woods, or what used to be woods. We had a shed that was gone. Our mailbox was in our front yard. Our air conditioning unit had shifted off its foundation. And it was just complete chaos. And it was raining. And there was I texted my uncle, who's a weatherman in Chattanooga, and I said, "Hey, like, what's it going to do the rest of the night?" I said, "There's some possibility," because there were some thunderstorms that came after that.
Right.
And so after we made sure, like, okay, our neighbors are out of the house, like they're good, we were like, well, what can we do except like get in our bed and just like try to get sleep, because it was like 2 a.m. at this point.
Yeah.
And so we didn't sleep in our bed because our window had blown open and there was some rain and wind, and so our bed was wet, and so we slept in another bed. And I couldn't sleep because,
of course,
it's like,
how do you sleep?
How do you sleep? Even if it was just thunderstorms coming through, my body was like, you're not safe, And so I was just like, I think I finally passed out around 4:00, and then we woke up the next day, and everyone was just kind of like, what's going on? Like you said, we heard chainsaws. The army of ATVs started showing up, and then the one thing I do remember is around all of the chaos and all of the there was this one guy who came from across the street whose roof got blown off. There was insulation everywhere. He was walking around and he had made coffee, and he had mugs, not travel mugs, but glass mugs. Flowery glass mug, and he handed me a cup of coffee, and he was like, "Do you want a cup of coffee?" And I said, "Better believe it."
Yes, I do.
Like, yes, I do.
Good morning.
And I still have that cup of coffee.
Wow.
That's still that mug, and he just moved back in this year, and I'm like, I need to go give him that cup of coffee back, or that cup, mug back. But yeah, just that, obviously the community coming around, but just that one, like, that guy who lost his house was like, I should make coffee for people.
That's it.
Like,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah. But anyway, so that was the night, and I could keep talking, but so that was kind of the night leading into the morning. So yeah, that was, and then you guys showed up, I guess, the next day, or maybe the day after, because y'all were there probably.
Well,
like
we
a
went
week or
down
something.
Friday morning.
Yeah, Friday morning.
So I remember taking Friday. I texted my boss. I was like, "I'm not coming into work today. I'm going to Newnan," because we had been talking about this weather system, that Thursday here, in the Atlanta area, knowing that we were a little bit outside the high risk, but we still were. Right. It was still going to be a severe weather day, and so talking to my coworkers, they already knew what was going on, and I remember just getting on our, in Google Messenger system. I'm just like, I'm not coming into work today. I'm going to Newnan. And they're like, what? It's like, yeah, tornado hit Newnan last night. And so, and you and I went down there.
Yeah.
Like, gosh, we left in the morning.
Yeah.
Got there.
Pedro, who volunteers with us,
yeah.
I think family friends have a house in Newnan.
Yeah.
And they had a massive oak tree split the tree or split the house basically in half.
Yeah.
And so we went down there to see if we could do anything for them. We kind of helped clear their driveway and a couple other trees, but I was like, this oak tree, like we didn't have a skid steer. Like we were not, this was, we're only a year as a ministry. And I was like, we're not equipped to handle this tree, but, and their story was kind of crazy too. They were huddling in the middle of the house, and this tree comes through the middle. It said it took them over 6 hours to claw their way through sheetrock and
to get
insulation to get out of their house and squeeze around the trunk of the tree. So, I mean, I just can't imagine like how many stories like that. Like your story, their story. Like this one tornado in a span of several minutes, alters a lot of people's lives, is really crazy. But we spent, the next 6 weeks going hard down there. Like we were down there almost every single day for 6 weeks. We met up with Reach Out Worldwide. And I think that's who you saw maybe first.
Probably. Did they come from Oregon?
They did, yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, they had the skid steers, and just the day or two after, I just remember, and just a sense of like being at the mercy of really everything and everyone in that moment. That's, I think we have these understandings false understandings where I'm like, I'm in control.
Yeah.
Until like something like this happens and you're like, oh, I actually don't have any control. And you're at the mercy of everything. You feel like, and it's just like, it's overwhelming when then someone is like, well, yeah, you're at our mercy. So let's help. We're going to help you. Right.
Yeah.
And just Reach Out Worldwide, just like with the skid steers coming and just cleaning our side yard, in our backyard. Cause we had volunteers come with shovels and chainsaws and hands, but like, when the skid steers come, it's like, all right, can you guys move out of the way?
We get some real work done.
But just like in their attitude and like, just the love that they had for you, and for their work. And then you guys coming in like was just, and I'm not even sure what y'all did physically. Y'all helped. Y'all helped.
Absolutely.
But what y'all did in a physical sense, like, was dwarfed by just, I think, the camaraderie of like of brothers and sisters in Christ.
Yeah.
Just being like, hey, like, it's gonna be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
There was, and I don't know any of the psychological things, but I didn't really cry until, because everything is like survival mode. And then a couple of our friends showed up and they walked down. And as soon as our friends showed up, we just lost it.
Yeah.
And I think, one, because we felt safe, like, oh, we know you guys. But also, they were there before and they knew
they know what it looks like.
Before it happened. And so, so we were able to like mourn it together. So I don't know if you guys want me to share any thoughts on anything of like,
I was being curious, like, what did I really have like two thoughts, two things. One is, was there any substantial change like in your anxiety or mental health or anything like that coming out of the tornado, and does that still affect you today, or what does that look like?
Yeah, sure, great question. So I think initially when you guys asked me, it's this idea of natural disaster and living with it, 4 years later, or like how has it been 4 years later? And I've learned so many lessons that I love. I wish it hadn't have happened, but I'm grateful that I've learned from it. One of those things is like, in the mental health aspect, PTSD, there are conditions that existed when the tornado happened, when the trauma happened. It was night, it was windy, it was rainy, lightning. And so all those conditions came together whenever the tornado hit. And so whenever any of those conditions happened to come up, my body would tell me, you're not safe. And it would start to that anxiety. So for the first 2 weeks, every night, because that was one of the conditions, every single night, my body would say, you're not safe, because that's when the tornado happened.
Right.
But thankfully, that condition happens every single day.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so my body was able to realize relatively quickly, it's nighttime, there's no tornado, you're safe, you can relax. And so I was able to get sleep. Now, the other conditions, they don't happen as often.
Right.
So it took a little longer, when it, not necessarily when it rained, but when it got windy.
Yeah.
Both Stephanie and I, we couldn't sleep. Just once again, your body's like, hey, you're not safe.
Yeah.
You need to get out of there.
Those familiar sounds.
Yeah.
Like
the trees, the rustling of the leaves. And especially when it was windy and rainy and the rain would hit the house.
Yeah.
Sheets of rain. And so I honestly have not been able to enjoy a thunderstorm until recently.
Yeah.
Because your body just reacts, and your body, it's trying to keep itself safe. Yeah. God has given us these reactions to keep us safe.
Yeah.
But your body doesn't know the difference between a windy day and a tornado.
Right.
And so it's like, hey, get out of there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've been able to, I think they call it extinguishing those triggers, I guess. Right. Just because naturally I've experienced where I'm like, oh, okay, these conditions happen, but that doesn't mean a tornado is going to rip through your house either.
Right.
So it's okay.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, it has taken a while to get over. And I think it's different for everyone, because our house was like almost on the edge of it, because our neighbor's house had to be rebuilt.
Yeah, I remember the one on the corner there.
The one on the corner
right
had to be completely scraped and rebuilt. So our neighbors weren't even able to come back to their house for like 9 months, and the other one was about 1.5 years.
Yeah.
And so they were living in apartments through insurance and things like that. And then our neighbor, sadly, her husband passed away in May, probably because the tornado kind of triggered some of these things. He was a little older. And, so, me, I'm okay with a thunderstorm, but I don't know if others are, because I didn't have a tree come through my house. I didn't have a lot of these other things. So, but yeah, it still stays with you. I would say in terms of like community support, it's almost in terms of like mental health and community support. I think a tornado, and especially like being a pastor, I think a tornado is an excellent metaphor for any type of traumatic event that someone goes through, a loss of a child, a loss of a loved one. Just anything that they go through, because a tornado has probably the most destructive thing that the earth can throw at you, that nature can throw at you. The most destructive thing.
Chaotic.
Chaotic. Yeah, chaotic. But its path can be so small. If you drove down our neighborhood, further down the road, it just looked like a bad thunderstorm.
Yeah. Right, some leaves in the yard.
Whereas and I can remember this very distinctly, I think it's to the east of your house.
Yeah.
Your house, if I remember, faces west.
Yep.
And to the east, where the forest was your backyard. Yep. And then there's a creek.
Yep.
Down there. And I mean, I can just remember that was gone.
It was gone.
And then then you could see that church.
Yeah.
That's just around the corner
you
from
probably couldn't see that before, though.
Like, not in the same way, but I mean, just that path was so direct right through Newnan there that you could see. I mean, you could see. I remember we climbed up on top of that house that had the tree in it, and we could just see
blue
one direction. The house, it looked like Newnan. look the other direction, and it just looked like a disaster zone. And just remember there's the impact I felt just seeing how many trees, Newnan being the city of trees, you know, and how many trees were down, and just what that just felt like. You know, when your city looks completely different at that point.
And even to houses to the north of us, they have their trees. And I'm like, I hate you. No,
right. I want those trees.
But going back to the the very limited path of destruction. 2 years later, you know, we ordered food from some restaurant, and this guy was like, I had no idea. I know it. He lives in Newnan, but he's like, I had no idea. And I think, and once again, I think it's a not beautiful, but it's a good metaphor, a very accurate metaphor for, I think, sometimes when we go through our own disasters in our life, our own just things where there's so much brokenness in our own life. I think because sometimes the destruction path, where it's not like a hurricane where it wipes out like miles and miles everywhere around you, I think sometimes we can kind of immediately everyone came around us, offered meals, and you know, the army of ATVs that come from all over the South, they're just waiting, like, all right, it's my time to shine, boys. Let's go.
We're training for this our whole lives.
Exactly. And it's wonderful. And probably like 6 months later, if you're not living with the scars of it, you can forget. And so sometimes, you know, I think it sounds like I'm like, nobody came around. No, that's not it at all. That's not what I'm trying to say. But just, I think that the empathy of people who go through something where not a lot of people can see it because the destruction path is so small in their life. So yeah, it's just, I think that it helped me to empathize with people going through something that may not be clearly seen from everyone's perspective, whether it's spiritual or emotional. That's another lesson that I think I've learned in time, where, you know, a year, 2 years down the road, where it's like, okay, that person's okay now. Actually, they're like, no, I like, my trees are gone. You know, no, actually, every time I drive into my neighborhood, like, I get, you know, or so yeah, I think that it's helped me to relate to people.
Well,
have gone through.
I've been thinking while you were talking about how, I mean, you're a pastor. You have had to go through your own traumatic experience, but also, how have you led and pastored people differently? Having experienced that, but then you're a pastor in a disaster zone. So you guys remember that that happened 2 days before Palm Sunday. And so we didn't have church on Palm Sunday. He sent out like like something on Facebook real quick, like, hey, it's Palm Sunday. Welcome the King. Hope everyone's doing okay. And then we had thankfully, someone who goes to our church worked at a local middle school, and so we were able to get in there with hardly doing any paperwork, things like that. It was a blessing. But you know, you asked me how I pastor in a disaster zone. I didn't do it very well that week. I didn't really that week. You know, I was a worship leader, and I actually told the pastor, I was like, hey, I actually can't lead people in joyous songs of resurrection right now. I can't. And like, our pastor is so incredible. He was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, we'll get someone else to lead. I played guitar and everything, but someone else, you know, sang. And that, like, so that's part of it. It's just like, you know, it was great for them to be like, hey, it's all right. We got you for a little bit.
Because you need to heal too.
I mean, exactly. Like, but in terms of pastoring, I think, once again, I'm able to be a lot more empathetic. And I had to wrestle with God. And I had to be angry at God.
And
I had to have some of my mentors wrestle through that with me.
Mm.
I had one of my mentors say, it might be good to actually imagine you being in the boat with Jesus during the storm. Because I was like, Jesus, it felt like you were literally asleep.
Right.
You're like, what? Like, where were you? You know?
Mm-hmm.
So going through that, working through Psalm 13, which is the, how long, O Lord, do I have to cry out? Will you, not have your ear towards me? But just working through that Psalm of, eventually it's like, but I trust in you. I trust in you.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing God is okay when we ask him questions and when we are angry with him and when we say, God, I don't really want to pray to you right now because I'm a little upset with you.
Yeah.
One of our dear friends, a few months later, church is letting out and things are busy. It's chaos because she's got small kids and I've got small kids, and she walks past me and I walk past her and she's like, hey, how are you doing? And the first words out of my mouth was, I'm still working on forgiving God, but we're getting there.
Yeah,
and I walk past and I'm like, it's probably not the best thing a pastor should say.
Right.
But,
Did that just happen?
Yeah. But I was able, a little while later, I was able to give a sermon about resurrection, about the hope of resurrection, and about like these, in Romans, these present struggles cannot compare to our future hope of resurrection, right?
Yeah.
And I focused on, the story of that demonstrates what currently is, and what should be, and the tension that we live in that.
Yeah.
And the story of Lazarus, where, Mary and Martha, when Jesus comes, Martha comes up and she says, Jesus, if you had been here, Lazarus would not have died.
Yeah.
But I still trust in you, and you are the resurrection. And so we see these two responses in sisters. We see these two responses to trauma, right?
Yeah.
To these to brokenness. Martha comes to Jesus, and I think she shows this tremendous faith.
Yeah.
It's like, Lord, if you had been here, Lazarus would have lived.
Right.
But
Understanding the power.
But I believe that you are the resurrection. You will, you can do anything. And Jesus meets her in that faith. He matches that.
Yeah.
And he says, I am the resurrection and the life. And she's like, I know that one day, you're going to raise him. He's like, well, actually, like if you believed it, So that's one response, right?
Right.
And then we get to Mary, and they kind of have to what word am I looking?
Coax.
Coax. Thank you. Coax. They got to coax her out of the house. And she's like, hey, the Lord wants to see you. And she's like, all right. So she goes, and it's almost like Mary and Martha kind of rehearsed it, because she says the exact same thing.
Right.
Lord, if you had been here, my brother had not died. Yeah. But unlike Martha, Mary could not get to the second part of like, but Lord, I still believe you. Da-da-da. She's like, no, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.
Yeah.
And that's
that was it.
Yeah.
And Jesus meets her in that response as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we see tremendous faith, and we see Mary being like, where were you?
Right.
I know, like, my sister and I, we rehearsed this thing, but whatever. Where were you? You know? And he meets her there too. And so he says, show me where you've laid him. And in a sense, Jesus is like asking, where does it hurt?
Right.
There was something that once brought you joy, but because of the world that we live in, because of the brokenness that we live in, that thing is dead and no longer brings joy because of brokenness. So where does it hurt? Show me where it hurts. Yeah. Take me to that. And so he goes and he weeps. And he weeps. And that's the thing. Like, you have these two responses, and Jesus is so kind to meet us in whatever response we have. Yeah. Like, someone could have gone through that tornado and could have not wrestled and could have been like, Lord, like, you are good. Like, yes, Lord, I believe you are good. And he would have met that person there. Yeah. And for me, I was like, you are asleep in the storm. Where were you? And he met me there.
Right.
And he was like, let me weep with you. Yep. Show me where it hurts.
Mm.
But for us, we have to, there's a difference between walking away from Jesus because something bad happened and falling at his feet because something bad happened. Mm-hmm. It wasn't walking away because she was at his feet asking. And so I think, I was able, going back to the question.
Yeah, sure.
I was able to, once again, empathize with people when they go through something.
Yeah.
Recently, in our small group, there was someone who came from a really broken situation where in small group, she said, I really haven't wanted to spend time with God right now. And I was able, because I went through that, to say, God's okay with that. He's able to meet you there.
Yeah.
And he's okay with that. He still loves you. He knows what's going on. It's okay. And when you're ready to, maybe have more of a Martha response, he'll be like, sweet, awesome, great. Yeah. And right now you may have a Mary response. And he was like, that's okay. I understand.
Yeah.
So I'm able to, because I went through that own wrestling,
yeah,
I was able to understand. And Jesus is the nicest, most approachable, most patient person that we could ever think of, because he is.
Yeah.
He's okay with that. So I'm able to, from that experience, understand that, and to tell people. I think it's a powerful thing for a pastor to say, it's okay if you're angry at God, and it's okay to wrestle with God. And he understands.
Right.
And he's okay with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's where I'm able to kind of.
You hit on something that I was thinking about while you were talking. You mentioned early on in this conversation your love of the weather and thunderstorms.
Yeah.
That was taken from you.
Yeah.
That was, that stuck to me. That's something obviously Warren and I have experienced as well. Just we have a deep love of the weather and, just God's creation and what you see, how beautiful the weather can be, even when it's destructive.
Yeah.
But then you had that joy and that was taken.
Yeah.
And had to work through that, similar to, them losing Lazarus in that way.
It's okay. I said coax. So.
That's right.
We're good. We're tied.
We're tied. Yeah. And like you said, any joy that's taken from you.
Yeah.
Our responsibility is to, to keep going to Jesus. Mm-hmm. Because even though Jesus he's not, the author of these destructive things in some way that I haven't worked out yet, he allows these things to happen. So it's in a weird sense, it's the one who has allowed my brokenness is also the one who can heal my brokenness.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so, we find that through Scripture all throughout. And so our responsibility is just, even though we don't understand it, to just keep being at Jesus's feet. And when Jesus asks us, hey, show me where it hurts, to keep allowing him to go to that place. Mm-hmm. Because at some point, it's not always going to be as fast as, hey, Lazarus, get out of the grave.
Right.
And boom, he's back.
Yeah.
At some point, he will heal that. He will restore that joy. Mm-hmm. It's not as fast as, all right, show me where it hurts. Boom, you're healed.
Right.
Sometimes it takes weeks, months, years. Sometimes we won't experience that until the other side, until we're in heaven. But just having that faith of all right, I'm going to keep going back to Jesus and keep showing him and allow him to heal me.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a theme we talk about a lot on this podcast, is that extension. I mean, it's okay, there's an event.
Yeah.
It's traumatic.
Yeah.
Everybody rushes in to help. But everybody that rushed in to help might have other things they have to do in their life and other lives. And ultimately, at some point, the help kind of goes away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're left in the middle of the path of the destruction alone. And you've got to work through that over a long period of time. And it made me think of our other friends in Newnan, whose house we went to twice, three times maybe. The huge lot with just all those trees. And we went back exactly a year later, and that wound was still very fresh in their lives. Yeah. Just that's a year later after this storm. While, like you even said, some people in Newnan had no idea, Newnan's a wide enough place. You can be on one side of Newnan and be nowhere near this tornado and go, I didn't know that happened. whereas somebody else is still dealing
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3 years later
Yeah.
with the fresh wounds of that.
That's why the Newnan tornado offered a unique perspective as far as disaster response goes. I think for a lot of us, because we could continue to visit that area, it being local, visit that area, and being a substantial tornado. Visiting that area year after year, I think we did 2 years there. All in all, working with John from River Life. River Life now. I think Church, they're part of Church of the Highlands now, I think, or something. But we worked with him, and he kept identifying homeowners that we could come back and help and stuff like that. And I remember 2 stories stick out to me. One was so these were both a year later, or more than a year later. One was it was pretty close to your house, actually. I guess, well, probably closer to the high school. But we walked up to cut. It wasn't really that much. It was like 2 or 3 trees. We were gonna fell 2 trees and cut up some other stuff, trim some things up with a pole saw that had been affected by the tornado. And this lady, John introduces us. It's been over a year, and then she loses it. She breaks down. She starts crying, and she's like, I'm just so thankful that you guys are here. I'm like, man, this has been but like to your point, it's something that it was a trigger that someone has not worked through completely, or a situation in their life they haven't worked through completely, and they're still healing from that. And then another situation, a couple of days later, there was like 2 hangers that we were getting down for this elderly lady. And not a big deal at all, but to her it was one of those things kind of looming over her head. It wasn't safe, but it was one of those things where I could probably live, just leaving it alone. But we went and dealt with that, and come to find out, her husband ended up passing away within months. I think it was like 6 to 9 months after the tornado from Alzheimer's. And he had no real issues before the tornado. Wow. The tornado was a trigger for his Alzheimer's to quickly decline, and she lost her husband within 6 or 9 months. It's not that's not going to be listed as a fatality from the tornado, but it still affected that family, and she's still mourning his loss a year later. And we come in and we take these 2 hangers down for her, and she's, those 2 things were reminders of the tragic event that she had gone through. To us, it's like, it's really not that big of a deal. But we took those 2 hangers down. She doesn't have to look at them anymore. It's not a reminder of, or it's, hey, this chapter of my life, I can finally close it and kind of start to move on. So it's like, and you think about how many disasters that we've responded to that we're not able to go back, and people are still dealing, with that. Yeah. With that.
I think, that's where ministries like you guys, just represent Christ. Of course, every individual, but, I think what y'all especially do, obviously y'all know it's more than just physical removal, but it represents really the call of all Christians to partner with Christ of restoring what is lost, of fixing the brokenness, right? Going back and kind of reclaiming, restoring something for its original purpose. And I think that's another thing of just 4 years later, we don't have any woods anymore. But we have this beautiful lot now where I go and play baseball with my son.
Right.
Where I'm just I'm reminded a lot of that the Lord restores, and how, he uses those things. He's not oh, I want JP and his son to play baseball, so I'm going to cause a tornado to tear down all the trees. But he's
but he uses that
but
situation.
He uses that. And,
right.
and so, and then also on our hill, we've got these dewberry patches that just started growing. And so every May, my son and I, for 2 or 3 weeks, he looks forward to the most, where he and his dad get to go and we get to pick dewberries. And so it's just it's kind of the Lord's grace, an example of the Lord's grace, where it's I didn't plant those dewberries, but they're providing joy to me and my son.
an opportunity that
where
you
did they
never
come from?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the crazy thing.
Exactly.
Is like,
yeah, they came. Yeah, probably came from like 5 miles that way. The seeds to
a plant flying in the debris. But
exactly.
I mean,
And then there's like we've got like persimmon trees like just randomly just like grow like we've got wild blackberries now everywhere. Some of it's of course from the birds eating it and flying off. But yeah, I think that's, and then there are some things that we have chosen to plant. Like we've planted a couple trees, oak trees that are 3 years ago, I think. So like a year after the tornado.
Nice, they doing well.
The oak trees are doing well.
That's good.
They're taller than me now.
That's great.
So some of it is like things that we decide to like, let's restore. And then others, it's like God's grace, where it's just like, oh, there are these wild blackberry and dewberry things that we get. So
that's cool.
Just like kind of healing the brokenness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool, man.
How's Newnan doing? In
Good.
general, I mean,
I think good. I mean, Newnan is like anywhere that's on the border of Atlanta. It's just kind of, it's like, we're building more and more things.
Oh yeah. I went through there the other day.
Yeah.
Stopped off at that exit with the new hospital and the new racetrack and Chick-fil-A and all that.
Yeah. Exit 41. 44.
Which is
44.
just south of the damage path.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken. Like,
Yeah. But it was neat to see, like, as the years go by, like, you know, afterwards there's like so many blue tarps, and as the years go by you see less and less blue tarps. And now as I'm driving through, I'm like, someone who just moved to Newnan like wouldn't be able to tell.
Like Leah, my wife, her brother just moved to Newnan. Her brother and his wife, and she's actually a radiologist at the X-ray technician. How do you say that? At that Piedmont Hospital.
Okay.
But they said, you can't really,
tell. If you look for it, you can tell.
Weather nerds,
can
probably.
Or I'm
tell,
like, that tree looks a little,
little bent over there.
I dorked out. I was driving to Florida the other day and I go down through Montgomery and go down, and so I was driving through Newnan.
Yeah.
I was like, hey kids, look, there's the damage path from the 2001 tornado, and they're like, so. They're like on their phones, you know.
I can get an aerial shot of that.
Yeah, they're like, gosh, you're a dork, Dad. But you know, it's just one of those things that we take what we do seriously, but we also really love the people we get to work with.
Yeah.
And we have memories tied to those places, you know, and we have stories that come, you know, survivors have stories, but so do all the volunteers and the others that come in and help out. They have their own stories of what happens. So like, Newnan's kind of like a home to, like, I feel very comforted and welcomed or comfortable. See,
You're
down
ahead of me.
Yeah. But I feel very comfortable in Newnan. I love that place. And like, I feel like I just go back and I know where things are because we spent so much time there and the people were amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, we worked with, multiple different organizations while we were there. I remember we pulled up that day and we kind of just faked our way past the police barricade.
Yeah, they're like, they let us in, but they were like, we're not, you know.
They wouldn't let us in on trucks, so we literally walked in at first with chainsaws over our shoulder. Right. And then we met, what was the name of the place? It was
Bridge the Gap.
Bridge the Gap.
Yes, Bridging the Gap. Yep.
Bridging the Gap. We walked up. That was where the barricade was to get into the town. That's where they weren't letting. And so we stopped there. We had been driving, you know, we needed to use the restroom, and somebody asked us, hey, are y'all here to help? And we're like, yeah. And so we started talking to them.
Yeah, they gave us a lot of our work orders for the next couple of weeks because they, you know, that's one thing about ministries that are in areas that get affected by disasters. They kind of know their community already, like ministries that have been there for a while, you know, and they were working in the Newnan, you know, community for a long time before this tornado.
Yeah.
And so being able to connect with them, and they're like, hey, we know all these people that we normally serve on a regular basis, low income, you know, type of situation. They need help. We're like, great, send us, you know. And so it worked out awesome.
It does. And just the way that whole disaster worked as an opportunity for us to bless people was, I mean, it was one of those things where it's just like, Lord, we're going. Yeah. Not like, Lord, will you please send me where I need to go? It's more like, Lord, we're going.
Yeah.
Now we're going to get involved in what you're already doing.
Yeah.
Right.
And show us where we need to go.
Yeah.
And then things just start working out. It's crazy.
That's one thing I remember about what you guys were telling me when you first came there. It's like, we just go to places and the Lord just orchestrates.
Man, we should write a book one day.
You should.
On just how it, like we can't orchestrate the things.
All
that
you
happen.
can do is pray.
Yeah.
Volume 2.
Yeah, right. That's a good book.
Yeah. Well, so, that the analogy of like a ship moving is easier to steer than
Absolutely.
if you're just, if you're just like, Lord, where do I go?
Mm-hmm.
Lord's like, well, there was a tornado in Newnan. Well, yeah, I get it, but where?
Yeah, but send me.
Send me. Yeah.
Like, grab me and teleport me. It's like. But, no, this has been awesome. I'm super thankful that we got to do this and finally got to nail down a time to talk to you. I've been super excited about this for a long time. So
yeah. Well, there's a. Do you guys mind if I nerd out and talk about the Lord of the Rings real quick?
No, please do. Please do. Please. Absolutely.
So I've watched the Lord of the Rings movies like hundreds of times, but I have never read the books until like I've started working through the books right now.
Right.
They're better, aren't they?
They are.
They're really good.
Well,
They're really good.
I don't know. I don't know.
It's hard to get the vision. Once you've seen the movies, it really creates the visuals.
Anyway, we could get, there's a whole nother podcast. That's the other podcast you guys do.
Sure, there's multiple out there.
So I just finished The Two Towers just a little while ago. But when I was reading The Fellowship, there was a little line that kind of stuck out to me. And going back to our previous conversation about like, 4 years later, how are you doing with, triggers and all that stuff? And so, the hobbits are on their journey, the beginning of their journey before they even meet up with the other parts of the Fellowship. And this is when the Black Riders are like really after them and they have to hide in the woods. And they have this really, really awful encounter with the Black Riders. And then they barely escape the Black Riders. So it talks about every other time that they hear someone coming down the path, they're like, "Oh, is that a Black Rider?" You know?
Right.
But then at some point they have all these interactions with elves and all these other people who come along and they help them. And there's this one section of the book that says it basically is like after a while they stopped listening for footprints or for hoof prints. Yeah. And I just stopped and I'm like, I don't know if because he was in World War I. I'm not sure if this was like his way of saying like, but I just read that and I'm like, that's exactly. After a while, you stop listening for those things, those bad things, because enough time has passed or because enough people have come and helped. Yeah. So I just thought it was a
really
neat,
cool.
Really great.
a neat way. I probably should have shared that earlier when we were talking
No,
about it. But
I
was like, I've been thinking about that.
Yeah.
To say that on this podcast.
Good.
For a long time.
That's
and I'm
really
like,
cool.
I would have been kicking myself if I didn't.
If you forgot.
No,
I
that's
forgot.
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. But anyway, we can close with the
Well,
Lord
there's
of the Rings.
hope. I mean, at the end of the day, there's hope. And that's why we do this.
Yeah.
That's why we talk to people like you. That's why we love the people we meet with. We want to share hope, but there is hope. I mean, we had some conversations with numerous people over the last few years about the long-term effects of natural disasters on the human psyche and on your mental health. And there's hope.
Yeah.
There really is.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
And one day we're going to get JP on a proper like West Great Plains.
I would love that.
Storm chase.
I would love that. Every time I watch Ryan
You have
Hall,
to get a bigger truck, buddy.
every time I watch Ryan Hall, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, we gotta go chasing.
I know.
It's gonna happen,
Chasing
man.
and
I
cleaning
know.
with these. Yeah, I guess we don't need to go all the way to Canada. We could just go to Alabama, but
Good, yeah.
but then you won't be able to see the tornado.
Right.
No,
We're
not
gonna
until it's right on top of
Yeah.
you.
We're going to get you a
As-
proper...
As a couple chasers found out a couple weeks ago.
Right.
You don't know till it is right on top of you in
That's how it
Dixie
goes
Alley.
Awesome.
That's
Well, JP,
thank you.
it's been great.
Yeah.
It's been great, and looking forward to we need to come down and visit again.
Yes. Yeah. Last time y'all were down, we had dinner.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, your kids were still very
And you
little.
have a child now.
I do.
Yes.
Yeah, 10 months.
Wow.
Wait. Almost 10 months.
Wow.
Yeah, 10 months and like on the 20th, so Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's cute. He looks nothing like Warren.
No, thank God. Right? No, but yeah, let's make that happen.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Little family gathering.
Sounds good.
All right.
JP.
All right.
Love you, man.
Hey,
Thank you for coming.
appreciate
Love you guys.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
Awesome.
See ya.